It's an industry that is thousands of years old in Africa, and today it's a vital sector that generates investment and creates employment opportunities as well. And so safeguarding the future of mining on the continent is becoming increasingly important, particularly when it comes to addressing one of the industry's biggest challenges, that being energy supply. So this is Insights from Africa. I'm Bronwyn Seaborne, and on today's episode, we dig into future-proofing African mining. Africa has an abundance of minerals and metals, with estimates pegging Africa's reserves at nearly 30% of the global total. But while the willpower to extract that may be there, the actual power to do so is lacking. And so to shine a light on the detail of it all, I'm joined now by Rensha Fantonda, Head of Power at Standard Bank. Rensha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So outline it for us. Just how much of a constraint is energy supply for the mining sector in Africa?
I think when you look at the mining sector, you definitely think about, growth, development, and specifically in light of critical minerals and the full value chain linked to energy transition. And what we find is, especially in Africa, we have a lack of development or slow development because of the lack of appropriate renewable energy or just energy supply across the different countries. So for mining companies, it's such an important discussion. We see the theme around electricity solutions, power objectives being driven by different type of angles and technologies becoming more of a theme over the last few years.
So given all that you've then outlined, do you believe that addressing this energy supply deficit is being done with enough urgency?
I think over the last few years, as I've mentioned, we've seen more and more urgency, and I think it's definitely driven by the uptake in terms of critical minerals. I think if you look at just what we see in South Africa, more mining companies are having open discussion around alternative solutions, not only the traditional way by buying from utilities. There's different ways to do that. We see new models being developed, and especially in a country where you want to grow and want to see more economic growth across the value chains and different industries.
It's so interesting because so often we speak about Africa's potential to leapfrog, right? And it seems that in the energy space, this is true. As you're highlighting there, it's so much more of a situation where now green energy, renewable energy is coming to the fore. And so we can really develop in that way moving forward. Is that the case here? Are we seeing solutions come to the table, green energy solutions, and that really actually helping us in terms of creating perhaps an energy mix that some developed nations might really wish to achieve, but it's just because we can leapfrog, given that because we have to add capacity, that capacity can now be green?
I think it's a very important theme, and I think the one point that mining companies keep on raising is twofold. The one is the need for baseload power, and the natural support, you want to source power that can address those needs. But at the same time, they're also driven by different regulatory environments and the need for green electrons in terms of CBAM regulation, carbon, etc. So what we find is that in an environment where you've got excellent resources in the form of solar and wind, especially in Africa, it makes sense. From a cost point of view, absolutely critical. We know that renewable energy at this point in time is some of the cheapest electricity that can be sourced. And at the same time, you can start to add battery energy storage where the cost and the price has come down significantly. So the optionality for mining companies become more and more of a theme around flexibility as well. And I think we will not at any point say that you don't need baseload power, but you do have more alternatives around complementing what you currently have.
And I think you highlight a really important point there. It's not that other energy sources fall away, at least not yet. And it's about reaching the so-called energy mix sweet spot, right?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about the sweet spot, it may mean different things for different companies. If you are in an environment or in a country where there's extremely good supply from hydropower, you're already sourcing green electrons through existing system. However, we've seen more recently in Zambia what the impact of a drought have on the supply of electricity, and that's a very good example of bringing in more a mix of technologies, having that flexibility, not only as a company but as a country, to be able to not over rely on one source of electricity, but support the longer term sustainable supply, which is exactly what everybody's looking for.
From a country perspective, then, do you feel that governments are doing enough to execute those energy policies and plans to get that mix right? Or is there still a lot of work that needs to be done from a government level to get that right?
Look, it's such an important driver for sustainable investment and growth. And we've seen across Africa, in some cases, a bit of a stop-start, but in other cases, a real commitment to get the regulatory environment in place and fast-track the crowding in of private sector, driving new developments. And I think there's good examples. The market is opening up we've seen it in South Africa, and we can definitely talk to the increased renewable energy projects that we've seen over the last 10 years since the launch of the program, and the different models that we see now with regulatory environment supporting private sector supplying electricity through various forms directly into the grid, being able to wheel directly to customers. We've seen open access being introduced in markets like Kenya and Zambia, and currently being implemented in Zambia. And I think some of that is certainly due to the crisis, but also the commitment from governments to be able to find solutions and to address economic growth, which is all stimulated through the development of power opportunities.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on all that's playing out in that space. Nice to hear that, there are some wins that we are making on this front as we head towards a more sustainable future for the mining sector. But Rensha, let's leave it there for today. That was Rensha van Tonder, Head of Power at Standard Bank, and she was highlighting there how we need to address energy concerns in a continent-wide manner. But after the break, we hone in a little and take a look at South Africa specifically, where power cuts have hamstrung the mining industry, but also spurred a push into renewables. You don't want to miss that, so keep watching. We're back straight after this.